It was just another busy Monday morning at St. Augustine Children's Hospital in downtown Chicago. Nurses hurried through brightly lit hallways, pushing carts filled with medication and medical charts, while doctors exchanged patient updates in hushed, efficient tones. The pediatric wing, adorned with colorful murals and stuffed animals, was meant to feel less like a hospital and more like a place of healing, but no amount of color could mask the sorrow that sometimes lived within its walls. In room 307, a little boy named Jeremy was curled into a tight ball on his hospital bed, his small frame trembling with sobs. He was only 6, but life had already handed him more pain than most adults could bear. A car accident had taken his mother and left him with a broken arm, deep bruises, and the kind of emotional trauma that no medicine could cure. His father hadn't come yet. Nobody was sure if he would. Nurses tried everything. Gentle words, warm blankets, even a tablet filled with his favorite cartoons. Nothing worked. Jeremy cried with the heartbreak of someone who'd lost his whole world, inconsolable and unreachable. Just outside the room, unnoticed by most, mopping the tiled floors with quiet diligence, was a woman in a faded green uniform. Her name was Amina. A single mother and a hospital cleaner for nearly 10 years, Amina was used to being invisible. She didn't mind. Her work was honest, and it helped put food on the table and keep her daughter in school. That morning, Amina had brought her 8-year-old daughter, Layla, to the hospital. School was closed for a teacher training day, and Amina couldn't afford to leave her alone at home. Layla, a cheerful, wide-eyed girl with 2 missing front teeth and a perpetual ponytail, was used to tagging along quietly, always with a small backpack and something to keep her busy. She had a way of making herself small, sitting in corners, drawing or reading. But today was different. As Amina scrubbed near room 307, Layla heard the sound of Jeremy's sobs echoing into the hallway. She put down her crayons, tilted her head, and looked toward the door. "Mommy," she whispered. "That boy is crying." "Why?" Amina glanced toward the room, her brow furrowed. "He's sad, baby. He lost someone he loved." Layla was quiet for a moment. Then she reached into her backpack and pulled out a small plastic bottle, her favorite bubble wand. She had insisted on bringing it, even though her mom had told her she probably wouldn't have time to play. Before Amina could stop her, Layla tiptoed to the door of room 307 and peeked inside. Jeremy didn't look up. His tiny fingers clutched the hospital blanket, his face blotchy from crying. Without saying a word, Layla opened the cap, dipped the wand, and blew a single bubble. It floated silently through the air, round, shimmering with color, and impossibly light. It hovered over Jeremy's bed for a moment before bursting softly against the wall. Then she blew another. And another. Jeremy, between sobs, blinked. He looked up. A bubble passed so close to his face he could feel the faint kiss of air. Then another landed on his cast. For the first time in hours, the crying stopped. He didn't speak. But his eyes followed the bubbles like a lifeline, each one a fragile promise of something better, something more magical than grief. Layla smiled, standing just inside the room, blowing more bubbles until they filled the air like tiny planets, each one spinning silently, catching light from the window. A nurse stepped in, startled. "Sweetheart, you shouldn't be," but then she saw Jeremy. Silent. Calm. Watching. Breathing, for once, without sobbing. "It's okay," she whispered. "Let her stay." From the hallway, Amina watched in awe. Her daughter, the child of a cleaner, unnoticed and ordinary, was doing what professionals could not. She was reaching this boy's heart. That moment changed everything. News of what happened in room 307 spread quickly through the pediatric wing. Doctors and nurses began referring to Layla as the bubble girl. Jeremy's therapist, who had been struggling to connect with him, asked if Layla could visit again. With Amina's consent, they created a quiet arrangement. Layla would spend a few minutes with Jeremy every day, blowing bubbles, telling simple stories, sometimes just sitting beside him and holding his hand. Over the weeks, Jeremy changed. He smiled. He spoke. He laughed softly when a bubble popped on his nose. The boy who had once been unreachable began to rejoin the world, slowly, gently, anchored by kindness and a child's innocent heart. One afternoon, as Layla blew bubbles in the garden courtyard outside the hospital, a man approached hesitantly. His face was drawn with grief and shame. It was Jeremy's father. He had finally come. He sat on a nearby bench, watching Layla silently. She noticed him and offered the bubble wand. "Want to try?" The man hesitated. Then, awkwardly, he blew a bubble. It drifted up, caught a breeze, and floated high above the courtyard. For a long moment, he watched it with tears in his eyes. "I haven't felt anything in weeks," he said quietly. "Until now." He met Amina the next day and thanked her, his voice trembling. "Your daughter, she gave my son something no one else could. I don't know how to thank you." Amina just smiled, tears brimming. "She's just being herself." The story might have ended there. But kindness has a way of echoing further than we ever expect. A young nurse named Claire, who witnessed everything, wrote a heartfelt post about Layla on her social media. It included a picture of Layla and Jeremy, sitting side by side on a hospital bed, blowing bubbles. The post went viral. Thousands of people shared it. News channels picked it up. One morning, Amina received a call from a TV station in Chicago asking if they could interview her and her daughter. "I'm just a cleaner," she said, nervous. "You're more than that," the reporter replied. "You're a mother who raised a miracle." They appeared on live television. Layla, shy at first, eventually charmed the audience with her innocent wisdom. Sometimes, people just need someone to sit with them. And bubbles make people feel lighter. The hospital was flooded with messages. Donations poured in. One anonymous donor paid for Amina's housing rent for an entire year. Another sent Layla a scholarship fund. But perhaps the most touching response came from other parents, families who had children with emotional trauma, autism, or deep anxiety. They began asking if Layla could visit their children. With careful coordination and support, a volunteer program was born, Bubble Hearts. Layla became its first ambassador. A child helping children. A year later, St. Augustine Children's Hospital had a new mural painted in the pediatric wing. At the center was a little girl with a bubble wand, surrounded by glowing orbs floating into the sky. Above it, painted in soft letters, were the words, "Sometimes the smallest voices make the biggest difference." Layla stood next to her mother, looking at the mural with wide eyes. "Do you like it?" Amina asked. Layla nodded. "Can we blow bubbles now?" Amina laughed softly, pulling out a new wand. The two of them stood beneath the mural, sending bubbles up toward the ceiling, where children, nurses, and visitors paused to watch, their burdens lifted for just a moment. In a world that often overlooks those who clean its floors or walk its halls unnoticed, a cleaner's daughter had reminded everyone that love and healing don't always come from stethoscopes or studies, but sometimes, from something as simple as a bubble and the heart of a child who chooses to care. Final note. What Layla gave that day was more than comfort. She gave Jeremy, and the world watching, a reminder, that even in our darkest, most broken moments, the light of compassion, no matter how small, can break through. That healing can start with a smile, a bubble, or the quiet presence of someone who simply refuses to walk away.